Once upon a time, every single dollar in your pocket was actually worth its weight in gold. Yes, real gold. The shiny, precious metal that everyone dreams of. But then, the United States said, "No more." The gold disappeared, and the dollar became like a paper. This isn't just about money, it's about power, trust, and a decision that flipped the entire world upside down. Let's rewind to a time when gold wasn't just a treasure, it was the foundation of the global economy. In 1944, during World War II, the world was in chaos, but 44 countries came together in a small town called Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Their mission was to create a financial system that would bring stability to a shattered world. A system that would last for decades. Here's the kicker. The US had almost 75% of the world's gold reserves. That's right, America was sitting on a mountain of gold. And because of that, the US dollar became the king of currencies. It was like the world's ultimate VIP pass. The dollar was tied to gold at $35 an ounce, and every country trusted it. The dollar became the main currency that everyone trusted and used around the world. For a while, this system was like magic. The US economy was booming. People were living the American dream. Homes, cars, TVs. The dollar was strong, and life was good. But then, things started to get a little messy. Fast forward to the 1960s and 70s. The US started spending money like there was no tomorrow. The Vietnam War was draining billions. Meanwhile, the government was pouring money into programs at home. To pay for all this, they printed more and more dollars. But there was a problem. The gold in the treasury wasn't growing. The dollars were multiplying, but the gold wasn't. Other countries started to notice. They began to wonder, is the US printing too many dollars? France, led by President Charles de Gaulle, was the first to call out America. He demanded gold in exchange for France's dollars. And he wasn't alone. Other countries followed. The US gold reserves started disappearing fast. By 1971, the US was in a tight spot. If they kept exchanging dollars for gold, they'd run out of gold completely. And then, President Richard Nixon made a decision that would shock the world. I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Which means President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the US dollar is no more backed up by gold. And it was permanent. With those words, Nixon ended the gold standard. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. It became fiat money. The world was stunned. People were freaked out. Without gold, what gave the dollar its value? Trust. Trust in the US government and its economy. But trust isn't something you can touch or see. And that made everyone nervous. Now here's where it gets wild. Even without gold, the US didn't just survive, it thrived. Why? Because the world still needed it. The dollar became the go-to currency for global trade, especially for buying oil. This created the petrodollar system, which gave the US crazy power. Think about it. Central banks around the world hold massive amounts of US dollars. Why? Because they trust it more than their own money. This gives America an insane advantage. They can print money, borrow cheaply, and dominate global markets. But here's the twist. By ditching the gold standard, the US created a system built entirely on trust. And trust? It's fragile. What happens if the world stops trusting the dollar? What if another currency, like China's yuan, starts to take over? The decision to end the gold standard was bold, risky, and revolutionary. It reshaped the global economy and gave the US incredible power. But it also created a system that's always walking a tightrope. So, what do you think? Was this move genius? Or a gamble that could one day backfire? Alright, imagine this. You're holding a dollar bill. Now, imagine that dollar is like a golden ticket, because, back in the day, it was. You could trade it for actual gold anytime. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? But for decades, that was reality. So how did we go from that to today, where dollars are just paper? Let's break it down. In the 1950s, American people were having the golden day. The dollar was strong, backed by real gold. If you lived in Europe or Asia and had dollars, you could rest easy, knowing those dollars were as good as gold. It was like having a safety net for your money. But then came the 1960s. The US government started spending more money than it had in gold. Imagine writing checks from a bank account that's running low. The Vietnam War was eating up billions. And at home, programs like Medicare and Social Security were costing a fortune. So, they printed more dollars to cover it all. Here's the problem. The gold in America's vaults wasn't growing, but the number of dollars was. It's like having a piggy bank that's full of I owe us, and IOU stands for I owe you. It's a written acknowledgement of a debt. When someone gives you an IOU, they are saying that they owe you money or something else. But it's not a formal contract, just a promise to pay back later. But no real cash. Other countries started getting nervous. They were holding checks, but they weren't sure if the bank could cash them. France was the first to act. President Charles de Gaulle said, "We want gold, not paper." France started trading their dollars for gold, and soon other countries followed. The US gold reserves began to vanish. By 1971, the US was running out of gold. If they didn't act fast, their vaults would be empty. That's when President Nixon made his game-changing announcement. "I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Before 1971, the dollar was like a promise backed by gold. After 1971, it was a promise backed by trust. Trust in America. Trust in its economy. Trust that the US would always stay strong. But trust is tricky. It's not something you can touch or measure, and that's why people started freaking out. What if the trust ran out? What if the dollar stopped being valuable? These questions sent shockwaves through the world. Don't forget to subscribe. And of course, ring that bell icon so you won't miss out the high-quality content we have for you.